Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Hello, listener, and thank you for choosing this podcast to support you on your entrepreneurial journey. It really is my privilege to bring you these chats, and I really do hope you get a lot out of them. Make sure to let me know with a review if you do, or send me through an email with your thoughts. I am very easy to find on the socials. The business story I'm bringing you today is from the multi-passionate and creative Eric, co-founder of Very Good Looking. And it's going to be deeply supportive to what I would argue is the most important aspect of working for yourself and building a business. It's the personal evolution you go through in business that really makes or breaks. Learning to look at yourself in new ways and truly acknowledge all that you're capable of where you may not have always thought you were. In this chat, we talk about how lifestyle interests can steer you into new careers, discovering how to create a business in your zone of genius through the creation and closure of other businesses. Naturally, if you know my story, I hugely resonate with that. Finding a balance between providing value, positive influence, and achieving financial stability in business, navigating business partnerships, embracing the love of work in equal measure to that of a hobby, and some really interesting chat around an approach to exercise and meditation, we're back to that personal stuff, super important, that truly allows you to give your overworked mind a real rest. Now, if you find yourself listening and you think, wait a minute, is that my doggo barking in the background? It's not. It's my own very small but very loud pug breaking through the sound barrier of a door, soundproofing, and a good microphone that should really only just be picking up me. But what can I say? Eric is in Berlin and my Australian time meant that it was dinner time for me and her, so there was little peace granted. Anyway, we love a bit of authenticity alongside our inspiring stories, so I know you won't mind. Let's get into the chat. I'm here with Eric Mirbach, brand and content strategist and CEO of branding, content and venture studio, Very Good Looking. Very Good Looking is in the business of what they like to call planet-saving creative services, meaning they help mission-aligned brands, founders and companies hit their business goals and drive positive change in the world. In short, they specialize in making very good things very good looking. Eric has been part of a number of impressive business ventures, which I'm busting to get into. But with Very Good Looking, he's helping like-minded movers and shakers find their way forwards with kick-ass creative and solid, thought-through strategy, hitting a lot of my favorite markers here. Eric and the team manufacture aspiration to spark change, and with a client list that includes Blue Horizon, a Zurich-based investment fund on a mission to transform the future of food, and ProVeg Incubator, who exclusively support pioneering companies in their development of disruptive alternatives to animal-based products, they are well on their way. Eric, I cannot wait to hear your story of this business, and I cannot wait for you to correctly re-pronunciate your name for me and the listener. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. The German way to say my last name is Mirbach, but I'm used to the Aussie or American way of pronouncing it, so it's fine. You can keep doing that. And
listener will know that I am quite Australian in my pronunciation. So I do struggle, and I do appreciate you saying that. I am in admiration. It sounds much better. But let's go a little bit into who you are as a person, and I would love to know how your best friend might describe you.
Sure. They will potentially say that I talk too much, but I mean well.
Do you know, I must say, I would say that a few people would say that about me too.
Well, good thing that we're here to talk to each other for some time, and we can both do that.
Yeah, talking too much on a podcast is definitely the opposite of frowned upon. We are all here for that, and I think it probably makes a very good strategist and brand designer as well. But before we get into all of that, before Very Good Looking, who were you? And now you can take me back as far as you would like.
Oh, okay. So this will take a minute. I would potentially start with, so I majored in photography, communication design, and wanted to become a photographer. And that was triggered by me being into skateboarding a lot. Like, I loved skateboarding. That was like my first big love, but I really sucked at it. Like, I was really bad. And so I had to find a way to still be allowed to hang out with my friends, basically, because they all got better and I sucked. So I picked up a camera to just like have something to do and be of service. And that spiraled into me making a first website on the topic, and then going to university for photography and interning with a couple of magazines, to then being recruited while I was still in university. I was recruited for the skateboard magazine that I had been subscribing to since I was 15. And that was the end of my plan for my life. Like that was all I had in stock. And now I started to do that. And I did that for 5 years. So we did a print magazine, 140 pages every month with very little budget and like insane quality. And that was a really good school for me to like really know how to do a lot with very little. 2 to 3 night shifts every month for 5 years, very little budget. That was an interesting time. It also tells you roughly how old I am, because like who does 140 pages in print every month? So that's been a while ago. And yeah, I did that for 5 years. And then after that, I was like, I worked with all the people I wanted to work with. Like I had a couple of covers. I was internationally published. It was great. Like I learned a lot about design and editing. And then I thought it would be good to not be broke all the time, and started to work with Red Bull Media House in Salzburg in Austria. And there I helped to build one of the content verticals for redbull.com. So the content strategy, like getting the team onboarded, like really seeing how, like basically doing what we did at the magazine, but for a bigger brand with a different kind of budget and with a bigger reach. So I took this whole DIY approach that we had and like brought it into like a bigger entity and saw how that works. So that was really interesting. Around that time when I worked at Red Bull, I went vegan. I had been a vegetarian for 10 years already. And around that time, like I saw a YouTube video, something clicked and like this door opened and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That kind of speaks to all the big things in the world that had been scaring me since I was a child, like climate change and deforestation and the rainforest and world hunger. And all of these things are very closely connected to the way we consume, and especially to the way we approach animal agriculture. And seeing that, I was like, that's crazy. Like that is something, like for the first time in my life, there was something that had impact and that I could have impact on, because my own consumer choices played a role in that. And I was like, cool, all I have to do now is tell everybody we all stop doing that. And then that's it, like we solve all these problems. Obviously, that's not how it went. But at this point in time, I thought, hey, how can I, like, what can I do to further this cause? Like I can learn a new job, like I can go protest, I can, do whatever, or I could use all the things that I had learned so far in university, in publishing, in a big company like Red Bull, when it comes to marketing and like spreading a message. I could use all of that in favor of this new thing that I found. So that's basically why I then quit the job at Red Bull, which was a great job, great team. I had a lot of fun there. We had cool things to do and created a lot of like really cool projects that I look back on very dearly, but it didn't have an actual, like I hit this point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like I'm promoting a drink that nobody really needs with a lot of money for absolutely no reason, even though it's fun, but that's not worthwhile. Like I want to use my time differently. And when I made that decision, I then spent like a decade of trying to do that, like trying to find ways to do that. And I tried a lot of things. Like I co-founded an ethical fashion brand, Winter Coats. I published a magazine, because that's where I came from. I published a print magazine for 7 issues. That was like a fashion and lifestyle magazine. Crazy good paper quality, amazing design, way too expensive in production, a total nightmare from a business perspective. But it was like a good, I always called it like a very expensive business card, because it opened a lot of doors, And what else? I also kept working for different brands. Like I worked for ethical fashion brands, traveled the world and looking at fashion production sites, that kind of thing. And I always dabbled in food as well. And then 3.5 years ago, I came together with my now co-founders, Frank and Tina, and we decided, hey, so we have this magazine, this outlet here. We could put like an agency unit, like a creative unit behind it to produce for the clients that we had. And that kind of spiraled out of control and is now our main business. Well, the publishing arm of the whole thing is like a little bit in a beauty sleep. The agency idea that we then called Very Good Looking developed a life on its own and is like my main gig right now. Yeah, I think that's the story in a bigger nutshell, not a small nutshell, but I tried my best.
It's a wonderful nutshell, and I think encapsulates so many experiences that many business builders don't realize the value of until they're going through it or are slightly out the other side of it, which is that exploration of self, which is following what matters to you, which is trying things, not feeling afraid to put things down and start again. And I think you touch on something that I talk about a lot in the context of people going into business for themselves and making that choice versus working for somebody else, which does come down to creating valuable work and work that you're really proud to put your name on, and work that makes an impact, no matter if it's small to a small community, whether it's on a larger scale in terms of the product that you're creating that really influences culture positively. I think that values drive is such a core reason for why people get into business. As an aside, can I just say, someone, and maybe you guys need to do this, and maybe I can be stood corrected if this is happening already. The brand of vegan gets such a terrible rap. I don't identify as a card-carrying vegan. I don't do all of the positive things that I could do. I'm a plant-based eater, but I don't do all of the positive things that I could do for this movement. But, it just, the values that sit behind it deserve such a rebrand. And like, someone needs to tackle veganism as a brand and fix it, because, you almost made a joke there yourself where you're like, what's the first thing a vegan does when they discover veganism? Is tell everyone about it and demand them to do the same, because we're so shocked at the statistics that are behind it and the impact that is behind it. And, I'll be very cautious here because I don't want to go on a soapbox around veganism, because personal choice is personal choice. But, I understand completely what you mean in terms of like, I just want everyone to know about this stuff, and I want everybody to know the statistics behind this and why this is so full on. And, I think that urge, that human urge that we have, has inadvertently given veganism a bad brand. So I think that could be, ideally, that would be a really amazing project for Very Good Looking, but I'm not here to give you more work. Yeah,
the problem is that's a lot of stakeholders that you have to get in line. Like, it's not an entity that we can like have any sort of control over, because it's a free world, and that's a good thing, and everybody has their own take on it. And there's a lot of takes of this that I don't support, that I don't think are a good approach or are effective, but still people have the right to do it in their own way. And like, we have chosen to, like, the magazine that I made was in the pursuit of that, like to create something on like that side of the spectrum of like high quality publishing and like creating aspiration around something that is normally seen as taking things away from me, and like trying to like turn that narrative around and make it about, hey, you actually win things and you actually get more, like you're inspired more and you can try new things, because otherwise why would you get out of the rut of your daily life and just, I've eaten this for breakfast my whole life, why would I change now? If you don't have a good reason for that, like I was a terrible eater growing up. Like when I told my mom that I would go vegetarian, she was like, yeah, well, you'll die then, because all you eat is like meat and potatoes. So there you go. So I had to change, and I had to adapt, and I had to become curious. And I think that's such a win, but it's change. And people don't like change, especially if it's change that's happening because they have to do something for it. It's a really hard sell. And that's what we try to do for the companies that we work for with Very Good Looking, is to like make this change as attractive as possible and find ways to communicate it in a way that makes it less of a leap for people. There's a good example of a German airline who now they have like these lounges, that like these business lounges that everybody has. But now it's like, if you pay for a flight that is like CO2 neutral, like we can talk about how much sense that makes in a second. But like, if it's CO2 neutral and you pay for it, you then get access to the lounge. So it's basically they make sustainability something that gives it some exclusivity and makes it something that's appealing to people. And that's the kind of little hacks that we need, because people are people and we are selfish, and and that includes me more than anyone. It's tough to communicate change, but there are ways to do it. And that's why we founded the agency. But it's important to me to also say that it's not just about vegan and plant-based brands, because there's a lot of things that can trigger amazing change that is very much needed, i.e. the car industry. Like, yes, a car can have vegan interior, but that's where it stops. Doesn't mean that there's not a lot of like communication around that needs to be taken care of in order to like change our approach. So it's an uphill battle, especially if you want to play by the rules that bigger corporations don't need to play by. But yeah, I agree with you. And then we're trying to do a part, but there's not the single entity of the club of vegans that would, be in charge of a rebrand and rolling it out across all touch points. That's too many touch points for us.
It definitely might be a bit ambitious. And I love that you talk a little bit there about values-based brands, because I think about that a lot in terms of the influence that brands can have on culture. And even those brands that maybe aren't embedded in a value set or a do better ethos with the products or the services that they create and offer, just their ability to positively influence culture, whether it be by platforming diversity on their advertising or making options for different people, making safe spaces for people to consume their products, thinking about, as you say, car brands, basing their safety features on the body size of women and men, not just men, of an average size. We won't go down that patriarchal headline now, because I definitely could wax lyrical with you on this stuff all day. But yeah, businesses do have an incredible ability to influence culture, which is why I think it's so fantastic that you found yourself into this business to be able to support those brands doing good, but maybe almost even grow into a space where you're supporting brands who aren't necessarily embedded in that, just do better and influence culture better. So tell me about, I guess, the moment where you realized that Very Good Looking was going to really grow into something, and what brought you to that moment where you said, yes, let's pursue this, and what were your next few steps?
I haven't thought about that. I think the moment when I thought that Very Good Looking would become the main focus was when I figured out that it works. Like it's like I tried a lot of things that have either worked from a value standpoint or worked financially, but very seldomly both. And this is different because like we can, first of all, it took me a while to realize, but what my journey that I like outlined for you, what it did for me was that I had the chance to like look into all these different industries and like in these different levels and like wear all these different hats. And that helped me to identify what I'm good at, what I'm interested in, and how some things work and why some things don't work. And that's just something that enables me to now look at basically every project that we have at Very Good Looking in every stage of that project and talk to every specialist that we work on in the teams that we craft for this project. Like I can, on a top level, talk to everyone about everything. I'm not an expert in any of these things. Like I kind of suck at all of them, but I'm like good enough to like talk about it to the client and to the professional actually doing it. And that combined with the realization that the thing that I'm best at and that is the most fun for me is the part where you build it. Like when we created the outerwear brand that I was a part of, building it out and creating the brand, creating the brand design, creating the system for all the hang tags, like all of these things were amazing, and building the website and creating content for it, et cetera, et cetera. But like after like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years, I was like finding myself standing on a shoot and it was like, we're doing autumn coats again. Like it's the same thing. It gets repetitive at a certain point, and my place is in developing it, and my place is not in running it indefinitely. Like I have to do the same for the agency now, but the projects that we work on are like specialized in this niche of like, we come in, we do our work, and then we package it and give it back to someone to go and like create impact with it. And that was the moment where I'm like, I should potentially do this because A, it's lucrative and a lot of the other things that I tried weren't, and B, I'm in my zone here all the time. And I can be of service in the most effective way here.
I think there's a lot of business builders who would really resonate with that attraction to the building of things And I can relate to that most certainly. I very much enjoy building something, having an idea, following it through, putting the pieces together, and then kind of handing it over and going, okay, now I can move on to something else, which is what the consulting side of what I do with branded podcasts really delivers for me. And it took me quite some time to figure that out. So I think it's a really important share that you can craft a business around the development of things that you then let go of. And that has become quite novel to me, because I think a lot of us as business owners are like, I'm going to make this business, and then this is going to be the business I do for the foreseeable future, and I'm going to smash it, and I'm going to have one focus. You know, we almost look negatively at having that kind of approach about being passionate about building things and then putting things down and then doing other things. But it can, as you just described, actually become your business to be able to do that. I don't suppose you'd ever consider treating me to a cup of tea? Hear me out. If you love the show, you've probably heard me talk about how much of a labour of love it is creating it. And I do love it. And I really love to hear about how it's supporting you, and have big dreams for bringing you more content more often so we can keep growing our businesses together. But the reality is, as an independent podcaster, I bring you this content for free. So if you love the show and the content I create for you, perhaps you'd consider buying me a cuppa to show your support. There's a link in our show notes and in the info about the pod section that says support the show by buying me a cuppa. And that link will take you to the official Buy Me a Coffee website. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a fully legit third-party donation platform for creators where you can make a small donation, the cost of taking me out for a cuppa, because I don't drink coffee, via all the expected types of payment options. Or just head to buymeacoffee.com/unemployedpod. I appreciate you, amazing listener. Now let's get back into the chat. Now, I'm very curious around the modeling of this, because I do often look at agencies like yours, like other creative branding agencies, podcast agencies, any agency, digital marketing is a classic one, and think about how you structure a commercial model that is supportive and is easily sold to a client. They can understand, they can see the value, particularly in a market like yours that probably doesn't have a lot of open and honest rates out there. There's no sort of like benchmark or baseline. So you're kind of building an agency fairly blind. And I think a lot of people are doing this. Can you talk to me a little bit about your approach to your commercial modeling?
Sure. So I think the main ingredient, so we found it very good looking in the middle of the pandemic. And I think like that already, like something that's really built in is that it's a very lean operation and like very flexible and very versatile. And for us, luckily, all three of the founders team, we've been working for decades in the industry. So we have a network already and we have connections here. And luckily, a lot of these people have been on a similar trajectory of like coming from other industries and thinking about latest when they get kids, they're like, maybe I should like take care of the future a little bit more and like utilize my work for that. So I feel like everyone around me as well matured into the awareness that things have to be done differently a little bit. So it's just important. Like that's another thing where I'm like, I'm happy that I did so many things. Like sometimes it could feel like it's a bit fuzzy and it's like all over the place, and like only in hindsight it all like makes sense and comes together and like really, really shows how worthwhile it was. With like the network and a very lean operation, like that was like the starting point for us that gave us a fighting chance. Because right now, I mean, with inflation going up and basically a war in our backyard with Ukraine, like the market is not fun right now. Like a lot of marketing budget is like cut dramatically. It's really tough. But not only did we manage to survive so far, we're also thriving, and it's like developing really nicely, because like now with first like really good showcases and like more and more to show for our work, and like it's becoming better and better. But like I think the main thing is being real in your communication, being human, and being authentic in what you want and what you want to do and how you want to do it. actually doing good work is something that people sometimes oversee in all of that. You have to deliver really, really good stuff. First and foremost, like product is not everything. The way you package it is important. Otherwise, we were out of a job. But if you package something that's not good, it won't fly. And then the third thing is like to really be versatile and not be spellbound by too much overhead, too many costs, by not being able to flexibly react. I think that would be like the three things that I would point to.
It sounds like one of those businesses where forecasting and forward planning can become challenging, and where you may find yourself in pitch mode fairly frequently, seeking clients, writing pitches, trying to win business, selling yourself, essentially. How have you approached the forward planning and forecasting of your business? What challenges has that presented for you?
Yeah, I mean, we don't pitch as much in the classical sense. For me, it's more of a like really wanting the right thing. And I think that just tracks with people. Like we're real, like we really mean what we say. Like we actually are interested in impact. And I'm more interested in the positive impact of the people we work or maybe not work with than in scoring a gig with them. And that is something that I think makes us special in a way. And I think that people can tell. We were in a pitch this year for a rather big gig, and we basically challenged the prospect and their approach to sustainability by saying, hey, we have to be really honest with your communication. Like the one thing that we cannot do is promise things that are not there, or overpromise or overstate things that are not there, because that, like, we're in greenwashing territory so fast that it's just going to fall on our feet. A, we're not here for that. B, it's not going to be good for you either. So let's take a really realistic look at what you have in your portfolio, what the roadmap is for becoming more and more sustainable, and like really be super honest and straightforward in communicating that, because people will connect to that. That was potentially, well, it felt ballsy to do that, because it was like, it's basically, if you have someone on the receiving end of that, it could be understood as like, what you do is not good enough, But I feel like when you have the people that you can actually work on something with on the other end, on the receiving end, then this will fall on, or this will be greeted with understanding and with respect for actually telling it how it is. And that I think is one of the biggest things. And this shows in all our communication. I'm being authentic in what I write on LinkedIn. The brand is authentic in everything we put on our website and put out on socials. And sometimes it's just like finding 2, 3, 4 people that are in the right position, that are your tribe and that speak the same language as you. And that can spiral into a lot of new connections. Also, the niche is very small. Like there are not a lot of people that specialize as we are. So that helps us. Like the positioning is very clear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You've mentioned your business partners and those that you work with. I'd love to know a little bit more about how the relationship has worked in being in business partnerships. Has it presented you with any unique positives and any challenges through that process?
Yeah, I have a wild history of partnering up with people who were not the right partners for me and then breaking up in a very painful way. So I've done that. A couple of times. Some went okay, some went really bad, and like lawyers and everything. So I've been down that route again and again. And I'm not saying it's the other side's fault. I'm saying we're not a good match, and we should have, like, both sides should have like seen that earlier. But at the same time, I never went for anything on my own because I want to work with people. So you could have said like, hey, if that doesn't work for you, why don't you like go on your own? Because I don't want to. Like, I really identify with my work. I really love what I do. And the main thing I do is work. That's like 80% of my day. The rest is eat, work out, and sleep. And that's basically what I do. And so if you do that all on your own, that's not healthy. So it was important to me to find people who I finally can do that with and who I click with, and where it's just a good match. And luckily, I found that in the team that we are now. Both Frank and Tina are wonderful partners and bring a unique set of qualities into this mix of us three that really heightens the quality of the whole thing. And that was what I was always hoping for. I have my qualities. I also have my quirks and my things that can either be potentially annoying or like things that I just have to work on. And the same is true for everyone else. But the combination of the three just really heightens the experience instead of creating like a mismatch or like trouble or like damaging processes in a way. Like it's working nicely because the communication is good.
What would one of your quirks be, do you think, if I was speaking to one of your partners right now?
I'm not sure if it's a quirk, but like I have deep sitting like beliefs that I have to work on and that I have to overcome. One of them is I've always been a creative. I'm not good at business, which is not true because like this thing is working. Like I'm not the fastest in Excel, yes, but like it's working. We've done good. Like I've made a couple mistakes, but nothing crazy, nothing major. I built a lot of really good processes in the company, but I still don't believe myself sometimes. And I think like that's like one of the things where I see both my partners like talk to me about that a lot. And it's like, dude, just look at what we've built and look at what you're doing every day. Like it's obviously not true, but I think we all have things like that. So I think like that's the main thing of like relearning my role. Like who am I now? Because I had like decades of thinking I'm a creative who is not good at organizing things. And turns out that's not true, but I'm not believing myself yet.
Yeah, it's funny how long it takes for ourselves to bear witness to the evidence that we present as we go through these processes. I think a lot of creatives would resonate with that. I really like that you bring up the aspect of working 80% of the time. Now, I laughed when you said it because I only just recently watched, it's probably a TikTok. It was a gentleman whose name I cannot recall, but he was talking about the fact that he doesn't have hobbies, quote unquote, besides work. And now that might sound really dark and sad from the outset, but he was like, I love working. It challenges me. I learn things. I get to engage with people. I build something. I get successes. I get heartaches, and then that's what I do, as you explained, 80% of the time. And in the other time, I'm just taking care of myself or chatting with family and friends. That's kind of my whole life. And he was saying it as such a positive thing. I found it such a breath of fresh air because I'm not dissimilar to you. 80% of my time, I am working or I'm thinking about work or I am engaging in learning or I'm talking to people. It's work. The whole thing is work. And I'm very happy doing that. And I think it's wonderful to hear because for people who also resonate with that work as hobby and work as personal growth and work as all of these things, why should we see that as a bad thing? Why do we have to have work in one bucket as, that's the tough thing that I have to do in order to live, and then put, knitting or ceramics or cycling or whatever in the hobbies, and like that's the thing that gets put in lights. It has a little bit of a bad brand, I guess, being a passionate worker. So I really like that you bring that up, and I think there's a lot of health in that because, as anybody running a business will know, most certainly the listener of this podcast, building a business and working on a business is personal growth. Much as you experience through hobbies, you can get into a flow state. You can challenge the deepest, it's like therapy. It's, the deepest part of your shit comes out. You have to deal with it and you have to get over it. So, I do just think that it's really important to stop down on that a little bit and celebrate you for owning that, because I think it's a really positive thing. And clearly over the years, it's resulted in some pretty amazing quote unquote passion projects that are actually fantastic business angles.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And I agree. It's like, I understand the perspective of like, if you're doing it for someone else and doing a job that you're not passionate about, I get that you want and need breaks and you want to do something else and take your mind off of the things that you have to do to make a living. I sympathize with that. And I've been in that situation, and I worked hard and for a long time, and like I was very scrappy, had to be very scrappy for a long, long time in order to build something that's different from that. And now I have it, and now I'm supposed to like not do it more. That's what I wanted. Like I've built something that I found something where I can use my creative knowledge and my creative skills to further a cause that I believe in. Like, that's the ultimate goal for me personally. Like, that's what I wanted. I have actual impact, positive impact in the world by doing something that I'm good at. And that's fun to me. Now, that being said, I also agree with the personal growth part that you said, where it's like, it's also very painful. Like the last 3.5 years of like unlearning the stereotypical creative reaction to everything and like trying to relearn it from a CEO business perspective has not been easy, and has, as you said, had like a therapeutic effect on me in terms of like I had to confront a couple of things that were very deeply like buried inside of me, and that had to do with the way I was brought up, the limiting beliefs that I might have adopted by like little things that my parents said at some point where they didn't even mean it. Like there's so much stuff that goes into this that you have to look at and take apart and really figure out, like, is that me that's talking there? Whose voice is this? Like, who is that actually what I think? And yeah, deal with fear, deal with what you mentioned, like how hard it is to like really plan that business and the finances and all of these things. Like getting comfortable in this position, yeah, is a lot of work, is exhausting, but is worthwhile, because like I'm a totally different person than I was 3.5 years ago. And I'm going to be a totally different person 3.5 years from now, because I plan on keeping doing that.
Oh, it really is a personal journey like no other. So thank you for sharing that. When it does get to those tough stages and you're relearning something about yourself, you're moving past limiting beliefs that may have been ingrained in you since childhood in order to achieve something that you care about in business, what measures do you put in place to support yourself and get yourself through and to the other side of those challenges?
Good question. So I've been in therapy for 3 years. I'm not doing that right now, but that helped a lot, of just having someone who's paid to just listen to your shit. That helps.
Amen.
That really did something for me, and I will continue in like doing that after I'm taking a little break. I've dabbled in meditation. I sometimes do that, like when shit hits the fan. Like that's something that really helps me. For me, it's exercise, like going to the gym and just following a really like tough but easy to follow regimen of like outsourcing responsibility for like an hour and a half a day of just following someone else's instructions and working hard and like using the body instead of my head, like switching the head off completely, following someone else's like lead and do what someone wants me to do, and like countering the hurting head with a hurting body kind of does it for me. Like that really helps me, and has also been a source of self-worth in a way. Like just knowing that you're not all brains and like keyboard fingers just kind of does something for me.
That makes so much sense. I have a pretty, it's not a strict regimen on myself, but I go to Pilates a stack of times in the week, and I probably only really found that and committed to that as a form of exercise about 7 months or so ago. And the fact that I can go somewhere and, as you explained, somebody tells me what to do is just such a gift. Because, you know, if I was to just go, I mean, if I go for a run, I'll put a podcast in, right? Like I have to. I just feel like, well, that's time, that's downtime. It's my job to understand podcasts and listen to podcasts. And, you know, I want to learn about the industry. So whack, you know, headphones are in and off we go. And that time though, where I'm physically unable to work or think about work is so, so powerful and so much better than just going to the gym, because there's someone there going like, okay, now you do this. Okay, now you do this. Okay, now you do this. So it's like a circuit breaker in the middle of that. So I actually think there's a real seed of fantastic advice in there, which is everyone tells you to meditate. Everyone tells you to exercise as part of establishing this. But perhaps if your meditation requires you to do some visualization, for example, you're being told to do something, that could be really, really good for the entrepreneurial mind to just break and get a little bit of instruction, get a little bit of support. But particularly with exercise, if you're in personal training or you're following a class, that can actually have massive effects. I think there's someone needs to do a study on it, because there's got to be something into it.
Yeah, I agree. And also what I think is really important is to not, people who are in this, who are doing this, like people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, have a tendency of overdoing everything. and like trying to tick all the boxes, right? If you can sit down to meditate, but you really switch your head off working out, that's meditation too. Like it's being in, like meditation is about being in the moment, right? Like however you want to do that is fine. It can be a guided meditation, it can be whatever, but like as long as we don't try to tick all the boxes and be like this being this superhuman before 8 a.m. and like ticking all these things off just to like tick them off and not actually like listening to what's working for me personally is not a good way forward. Like I use meditation when I am really in need of it. I have not managed to like make it an ongoing thing, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm getting a similar result by working out, and if I have a stressful day and like I can squeeze one in or the other, like I'm good. Like I try to be patient with myself and not ask too much from myself.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We all do try to be superhumans, don't we? And do more than we need to and do everything all at once. It's probably the golden nugget that I needed to hear in that moment. But thinking about where your business can head and what it can offer to you as somebody who loves to build things, who loves to make impact in your business, in Very Good Looking, where do you hope to see it grow to over the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically two kinds of companies that I think have like an attractive offer for. And that's companies that are people like us, that are our tribe, that want to work with people who are and think like them and talk like them. So startups in the vegan and plant-based space, for example, or in ethical fashion, or it could be climate tech, it could be transportation, it could be the construction sector, but it's either people who see themselves in us and how we communicate and what we do, or it's bigger entities who are serious about changing their communication and changing their product and changing their ways and like really embracing sustainability in their business. And that's what I'm excited about the most, I think, because it's the tougher job. It's harder to get a foot in the door. It's harder to work against like grown ways of doing things. Like we've always done it this way. It's really hard to overcome. Tradition is a big thing when it comes to communicating change, because it's the exact opposite. I heard this once where somebody said, or it was like this quote that I read of just like tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, which I loved. Like that's what it feels like to me. It's just like, yeah, nobody, like, who cares? Like we can rethink this. But I think there's the biggest lever for us to create change with these companies. So that's what I'm super excited about. Like get a foot in the door with bigger entities that maybe are even like global companies, and that we can like really create lasting change on a scale that with a startup is like rather unlikely, at least in that speed.
Well, I truly hope this episode finds some big business doing positive things with strong values, finds those ears, because, yeah, if we can get more of that in lights and influencing culture in a positive way and influencing change on a high level, we have a bit of a fighting chance. So, Eric, it has been so wonderful to hear your story. And again, I still have so many questions about everything in the past. We didn't even get to touch on the fact you did a collaboration with Wu-Tang, huge hip hop fan over here. So we'll park that for another conversation at a later date, but I'll leave that as a seed for the listener to follow you and connect with you as well. But it truly is such a gift to lift the lid in your business building ventures and share what is some of the tougher moments and the figuring out of building a business. It's a wonderful gift to give to me and to the listener as well. So in return, what can we do to support you to grow? What can the listener and I do for you?
I haven't thought about this. Just look at the things that we put out on social and on our website. And if you know someone who does something that seems like it's along the lines of what we do or could benefit from what we do, if you feel like they have a problem that we have a good solution for, and that is something that will create positive impact in the world, just connect us. I think that's the one thing. Other than that, I'm just happy to be here, and I hope that what I had to share is of value to someone.
I'll just 100% back that in, because if we can connect each other with more business, like we're a whole community of business owners, and we need to rise together. Rising tide lifts all boats. It's all of our favorite statement. But yes, that we underestimate the networks that we have individually and how we can help other great businesses grow, and the way in which that comes back tenfold when you put it out there without expectation. So I do truly hope that there is someone out there listening who makes a connection for you and gets that in return in some way, shape or form. And I'll make sure to have the links to your website in the show notes, also to your LinkedIn, which is where we first connected, my favorite social media platform of all time. So I'll make sure to have that in there as well. Eric, it's been wonderful to hear your story. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.